In my opinion, the playstyle of the game changes around BR 8.0 for realistic battles. This is due to some circumstances that I will explain in this video. I will also talk about how I recommend playing higher tiers and top tier in War Thunder ground forces. Please keep in mind that this may differ from other playstyles, and I can only recommend what has led to successful matches and fun playing higher tiers. I mainly focus on not getting destroyed while still having an impact on the match, so I might not get the most kills every match. Welcome to my new video. Before we look at my tips on how to play higher tiers, we need to understand what is happening around BR 8.0 and why this changes the playstyle. To sum it up before we dive deeper into these general topics, the only thing that matters in higher tiers is speed. Reload speed, the time it takes to get the aim on the target, the mobility of your vehicle, repair speed and so on. In higher tiers, only speed matters. So let's start with the general topics. Armor and rate of fire. For most vehicles, armor becomes irrelevant. Yes, there are still some MBTs that can deflect shots, but they also have weak spots, and with the very precise guns, you can easily hit them. Because after 8.0, the first vehicles get a laser rangefinder, and this means they can get the distance to your vehicle within a few seconds. In addition, vehicles get access to high velocity darts, and ATGMs get more frequent. So as a good rule of thumb, assume that everybody you encounter is able to destroy you, no matter if you have a down tier or up tier match. Light vehicles versus MBTs is another topic. While at lower BRs, light vehicles mostly had less dangerous guns than heavy tanks. In higher tiers, they can easily destroy you, and in addition, they are faster than an MBT. Even anti-air vehicles have the guns to take out MBTs with the right ammunition. A better rate of fire and mobility give light vehicles and anti-airs a huge advantage in higher tiers. 1 death levers. It is a common situation that you will have teammates that spawn in one vehicle, die and leave the match. This is even more frequent in higher tier matches. No need to say that this gives the enemy an advantage, and such matches are hardly won. Check the leaderboard from time to time and see how your team or the enemy is doing. When there are way more players on the enemy team, it is more likely that you are surrounded by several hostile tanks. So better check twice before you leave cover or stay at your current position. This often leads to a situation that I call false steamroll. In the first seconds or minutes of the match, it seems like your team is capturing all of the points and steamrolling the enemy team. But once those players die, they either leave the match or jump into a jet or helicopter. Sometimes this close air support can help, but they can't capture the points efficiently. Spawn campers. I cannot stress this enough. Players will use the mobility and laser rangefinder to spawn camp you without hesitation. Spawn camping is annoying, and it becomes way easier and more frequent at higher tiers. On some maps, you can try to use a different spawn, but not all provide this and you will be stuck in your spawn. So try to spawn intelligently if possible. To make it short, strike drones are annoying and ruin the game. Keep in mind that there always might be a strike drone in the air in top tier. Recon drones are something different. Don't underestimate the power of knowing where the enemy is. Mostly light vehicles have the possibility to spawn a scout drone and ping the enemies on the battlefield. This is a massive help for your teammates, given that they have an eye on the minimap and the chat. Close air support. Close air support can already be pretty annoying in lower tiers, and it doesn't get better. Beside fast jets after 8.0, you will also encounter helicopters with semi-automatic guided missiles. By the time I made this video, there are some BR ranges that don't have any effective anti-air vehicles to counter the close air support. Try to use buildings as cover and listen carefully for helicopter and jet engines. Keep in mind that some maps are designed in such a way that they may favor one team over the other. Distance to the enemy may not matter, and on some maps, one side may have a clear line of fire into the enemy spawn or better positions with solid cover around capture points. The only things that might help are using a route that is safe for a fast vehicle to get to the crucial positions before the enemy does. The full lineup can also help you stay longer in the match than the enemy team. Unspaded vehicles. This can be annoying. But in higher tiers, APFS-DS rounds are the go-to shell. We all know that we need to grind using Heat FS. The laser rangefinder is not a big problem, since I like to move close to the capture points. However, an unspaded vehicle puts you at a disadvantage. Try to capture points and stick with teammates to get the desired modifications as fast as possible. Some BRs are just unplayable. Either you don't have a full lineup, or other nations just have better vehicles. Some lineups do not provide good anti-air, which is a must for higher tier matches. There might also be some event vehicle or popular premium vehicles that bring a lot of 1 death levers with them. With this out of the way, we can finally have a look at my tips on how I recommend playing higher tiers. First, you want to check your lineup. Since speed is the only thing that matters, check what your vehicle is capable of. Check your lineup and maybe switch a tank with another vehicle. The slower your vehicle is in terms of reload, mobility, aiming, firing, and so on, the more carefully you have to play and the more of a disadvantage you have in higher tiers. I had better matches when I started to divide the matches into 3 phases. Phase 1, survive, phase 2, capture and clear, and phase 3, control. Following, I will explain each phase and give tips on what to do. Phase number 1, surviving. Well, this might sound obvious, but considering the 1 death levers in spawn camping, it makes more sense. A lot of players try to get into a position to spawn camp you fast, which makes spawning with your second vehicle really difficult. When you stay alive and are in a good position, the match gets easier because of the 1 death levers. Fewer enemies mean fewer threats. The following tips can help you stay alive in the first phase. Stick with teammates but be reasonable. When they move to an obviously bad position or overpush, don't follow them. But when you stick with teammates, you have a better chance of surviving. They can not only help you repair faster, but also shoot while you are reloading, which doubles your rate of fire. Additionally, they might detect enemies you didn't see, but don't overpush. A lot of players tend to rush into the battle, get a few kills, and then get destroyed. Follow teammates reasonably. You can also pick a good position for your first stop, but overall I had better matches as I stick with teammates. A good position with some teammates close to you is the best start of a match. Avoid frontal encounters at all costs. Similar to flying planes, every head-on encounter comes with risks. Instead, follow your teammates and flank the capture points at close range. You want to be able to shoot at the side of the enemy, giving you the extra seconds needed to leave solid cover. Most of the time, the enemy is aiming in front of them and can't focus on you. You don't need a laser rangefinder to do this, but if you have one and the map suits it, you can also start sniping while flanking a capture point. Whatever you do, try to flank the enemy. If you don't have the chance to flank or find yourself in a situation where the enemy is aiming directly at you, try to relocate or use the third person to check if you have enough time to leave solid cover and attack the enemy. Your vehicle's mobility is essential in such situations. Always use solid cover or foliage and check in third person, or with binoculars to see if it's safe to leave cover. Even when flanking, use solid cover and make sure to disable the enemy's gun when you can't take them out in one shot. Use aiming and shooting with binoculars when your tank is hidden behind foliage and you can't see the enemy through the gunner's perspective. With the solid rounds and high velocity of the darts, you can easily shoot at enemies. When moving forward on the battlefield, jump from one solid cover to the next, keeping in mind that distance is no longer relevant and the enemy can snipe at you from any position. Stay in the open for as little time as possible. Use recon drones to ping enemies on the map, especially on dense maps. You can also check if it's clear to jump to your next position before leaving cover. You don't have to capture the point right away, but you can if you have a vehicle that is fast enough and if the capture point provides a good flanking position and there are teammates around you. Whatever you do, make sure to survive the first wave and check the leaderboard to see what's going on before moving to the second phase. Phase 2, capture and clear. This phase isn't as easy as it sounds. Timing is crucial. Check the minimap and leaderboard before capturing the point or clearing the area around it. When a good number of hostile players have left the match and your team is beyond the capture point in good positions, you can occupy the capture point. Don't fall for the false steamroll I mentioned earlier. Sometimes your team might be way beyond the capture points early in the match, but they overpush, get destroyed and leave the match. The best indicator for this phase is the 1 death levers. When there are more on the enemy team, go for the capture points. When your team already has the point, make sure to clear the area around it before moving to the third and hopefully last phase. Hopefully, because sometimes you might need to capture another point to win the match. When jumping from capture point to capture point, use solid cover as often as possible. But when everything is fine and your team has at least 2 capture points and fewer 1 death levers, it's time for Phase 3, control. Now is the time to prevent the enemy from getting to the capture points ever again. Move to a position around or beyond the capture points where you have a good line of fire and can oversee a wide area if possible. Flanking is again the preferred playstyle. Whatever you do, don't spawn camp, although it most likely will feel like spawn camping since distance doesn't matter anymore. Just make sure that the enemy can't get to the capture points again. Doing so, you should be able to take out the remaining enemies on the ground. In this phase, it is also more likely that a hostile strike drone is in the air or close air support, so you want to use solid cover in addition to the flanking position. Overall, this is how I had the best matches in higher tiers. Fast vehicles dominate higher tiers and speed is all that matters. Keep in mind that some BRs are flooded by event or premium vehicle and sometimes unplayable. The 3 phases I recommend might seem to be obvious, but since everything can kill everything, 1 death levers and spawn campers are more frequent. In many matches a 1-by-1 team running out of players. Following those 3 phases helped me to have better matches. Try to survive the first phase or wave in the match, because this is the critical one, and then focus on the capture points. Respawning can be very difficult due to the spawn campers. And even when the enemy doesn't spawn camp, it is harder to get back into the match since distance doesn't matter anymore. I hope I was able to give you some tips on how to play higher tiers in War Thunder, and you liked the video. Like, subscribe and leave a comment if you want to, and check out my Discord server for more information and to connect with other players. Hope to see you in game soon.